So today we're going to talk about holding tanks, which includes chemicals that you might be using, some add-on accessories, and of course good old toilet paper. We'll talk about all of that and what it means to your holding tanks. So the more you know about holding tanks, the less trouble you will eventually have. So we'll be talking about the black tank, the gray tank, and of course the freshwater tank. So to get started, let's talk about the freshwater tank. Usually it requires the least amount of maintenance. Matter of fact, some people don't even use their freshwater tank. If they're always camping with hookups at the campsite, they might not feel like they need to carry water. But I always carry water because we need it when we're going down the road. I have actually been to campsites that had no water, so you want to be prepared for those issues. So fresh water just means that it needs to be fresh. If your water sits in your tanks for over a period of time, the water is not going to be fresh, and worst case, mold can start growing inside your tanks, and you don't want that to happen. So periodically you need to flush your tank out, and what I do is I use a small amount of Clorox bleach to put into the tank, and then I'll hook up and I'll go down the road, get that water all mixed up and washed up on the sides of your tank, come back, flush that out, and flush it again with fresh water about 2 more times to ensure you're getting all of that Clorox out. And that's pretty much all you have to do. They do sell some products that you can put in with your fresh water that, you know, supposedly keep it clean, bacteria-free, or things of that nature. I've never used it, so I can't really tell you if they're good or if they're not good. Your gray water tanks might get more use than any of the other tanks because that's where your water from your showers and your sinks, your dishwashing, all of that goes into your gray water tanks. And frequently your gray water tank is going to be one of your larger tanks. Or in some cases, like in my fifth wheel here, I have 2 gray water tanks. So to maintain your gray water tanks, you basically just want to keep them flushed out. There are some additives you can put in there and some homemade remedies of baking soda and things like that to control the pH in there. But I have found out if you flush your tanks thoroughly, and most importantly, try not to let food particles go down your kitchen sink. Of course, there's going to be a little bit that goes down, you can't prevent that, but the less food particles that go into your tank, the better, because that's really what's going to get into the bottom of your tank and start to build up. And over time, you just don't want that. Now, your black water tank is really the tank that requires the most maintenance. We all know that every time you flush the tank out, you need to put some sort of chemical in there that's going to stimulate the growth of bacteria, that's going to break down the waste items that's in your tank, and also to hold down any smell that's in there. For me, I use this product called Happy Camper, and it works really good. There are many, many products out there available, so you'll just pick one, try it, then go on to something else if that doesn't work for you. But ensure that you do carry enough of this so that every time you flush that black tank out, you'll have some chemicals to go back in there to try to keep it as maintenance-free as possible. Now, if you've been following my YouTube channel, you'll see that in a lot of videos, Cosmo here, or maybe our cat, Sky Cat, will come in and photobomb while I'm filming. And that's okay, that adds just another layer of entertainment here. So let's talk about flushing the black tank in particular. The gray tank is pretty understandably, when it gets close to being full or when you're ready to leave the campground, you want to flush that out. The gray tank takes a little more thought. Since it's the tank that has the most amount of large particles in there, not only the waste, but the tissue that goes in there, you want to make sure as best as possible when you flush that tank out that you are able to sweep those particles out of your tank. So always try to let your black tank get, I'd say, at least half full before you flush it out. Sometimes you can't do that if you're going to a different campground every night while you're traveling long distance. You might not want to carry that extra weight and you'll flush it every morning before you leave. But if you can, let that tank build up some volume in there, because what happens when you do flush that tank, that volume of water, it just pulls all of the paper and the other big pieces of waste out of that tank. On the black tank, there's a lot of discussion over what toilet paper should you use. I know that when you go to the RV store, they have the special RV paper in there, and we have used that. We started off many years ago purchasing that. We found out that we could use products that were much more available and still be safe in having that paper break down on the toilet. So the paper that we use is pretty much the same thing that we use in our home. As long as the package is marked septic tank safe, we've had no problem with it. So there are many products out there that make paper that's marked septic tank safe, and I think that's a good way to go. So with that being said, I would still minimize the amount of paper that goes into your black tank. The paper will break down, but it might take a little more time to do that. And if there's ever an accumulation of paper in your tank, it's going to be extremely difficult to get that out. So in this case, the less the better when it comes to toilet paper. Now, all RVs are going to have what's called a wet bay or a water closet, somewhere that your water connections are going to come together to allow you to access to your valves and maybe some other features that would involve winterizing. Well, in my water bay here, I have 3 valves, a black valve and 2 gray valves. And I have a water input and then various switches where you can shift between your city water and the water that is in your freshwater holding tank. So these valves are something that you really want to pay attention to. In my case, these valves access the tanks through a long cable. So a common problem with these valves is that the cables will either over time rust up or become obstructive in some way, and you won't be able to open and close your valve. What I do with mine, every time I pull the handle to open the valve, I'll spray some of this break-free lubricating penetrating oil in there to help get on that cable and maybe prevent it from rusting up. There is water that's going to get on these cables. When you disconnect the fresh water, some water is going to dribble out into this compartment. And when you're using your black water tank flush, some water is going to come out of that when you disconnect. And when that moisture gets on these cables, rust will start to form. And that's why I use the penetrating oil to help prevent some of that rust from forming. So this is a closer look at the valve connections. We have 1 for black, 2 for gray. Have a freshwater in, and then a valve that will switch from city water to your freshwater holding tank. And then on my unit, it has these other connections for winterizing. So when flushing your tanks, either at a dump station or even when you're sitting at a campground with full hookups, what you want to do is to flush the black tank first and follow that up with your gray water. The reason for that is your black tank is going to leave some debris in your drain hose. So the gray water will come through there at a pretty good volume, and it will sweep that debris out of the drain hose and down into the sewer. And if you remember, I mentioned that let your black tank get at least half full before you flush that. When you're at a campground with full hookups, it's preferable that you do not leave your valves open, because there can be a possibility of sewer gas coming back up your drain hose and coming into your tanks. If you have a black tank flush, it'll be something like this, where you'll hook up a water hose and it will spray that fresh water into your black tank in effort of removing the debris from the sides and the bottom of your tank. It's a good idea to do this every time you drain your tanks. But something on this black water flush that some folks do not know is that it has a check valve, or a valve that prevents backflow of the black water into your hose. And I'll show you what that looks like on my unit. This is the black tank flush check valve. Mine is located under my lavatory sink in the bathroom. So let's talk about some problems that you may have with your tanks. The primary thing that will break on your tanks are the valves. So you could either have a valve that is stuck in the open position or stuck in the closed position, and either way, that's bad news. Now, if it's stuck in the open position, in my line of thought, that's probably a better situation to be in, because I use one of these. This is a twist-on valve that you place on your outside sewer connection on your RV. So if your valve on your black tank or your gray tank, either one, is stuck in the open position, this valve here will prevent it from going out on the ground. You can find these on Amazon, and I'll put you a link in the description below, or you can find them at your RV store, or maybe even at Walmart. They might be there. They're pretty inexpensive, and I think they are well worth the insurance to go ahead and put one of these on and just be on the safe side. Installing this twist-on waste valve is very easy. It will just twist right on your sewer connection. Put your cap on it. Ensure that it's closed, and you're all done. One trick that you can do with this valve here to maybe extend the amount of gray water is that your gray water tanks may sit on different levels. One of my tanks sits almost a foot higher than the other tank. So what you can do is leave this valve closed and then open both of your gray tank valves, and what will happen is that water level will equalize in both tanks and maybe give you more volume. If you sense a sewer smell inside your RV, there's two primary reasons. Number one is the seal on the toilet flush valve. What you see here is not sealing good, and gases can be coming from your black tank up. A way to check this is to put some water in your toilet, leaving the valve closed, and see if the water drains out. If it drains out, then your seal is not completely seated, and you'll need to take a look at that, and it may be something as simple as putting some silicone lubricant on the rubber seal. The other reason may be your fans and your ceiling. If you're drawing air in from the outside to ventilate your RV, it may actually be pulling air from your black tank vents. In this case, you'll want to check into getting a special cap that goes into your vents that would direct that flow of black tank odor away from your vent. Well, that's about it for RV Holding Tanks 101. There's much more to cover, but we just don't have time to do it in this video. So I may be putting out more videos in the future to get a little more in depth, especially on the black holding tank. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to click that subscribe button. And until next time, thanks for watching.